So hi, Bruno. Welcome back.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me again in
Yeah.
these pandemic times.
Yeah. So last time we already, clarified what was your first computer and how you got to programming. So and today we have to talk more seriously because John Klingen was also on my podcast and he already mentioned that you really love YAML, right?
I do love YAML, yes. It's the most beautiful thing in the computer science space.
Mm-hmm.
It is a technology that allows people to see white spaces because, the more you edit YAML files, the better you get at actually seeing white spaces. You can count automatically in your brain. It just happens because you are so afraid of messing up in runtime. So you make sure those white spaces are counted by hand.
I tried to convince John that you are actually not serious about that. And I said, this is probably a joke. And see, no, this is serious. I was like, I cannot believe it. And I think it is a mix, right?
No, it's pure sarcastic love.
Yeah. What I have to admit, I was actually not able to edit YAML at all. So what I did, I used JSON and then converted always JSON to YAML. But in the recent 3 weeks, I managed to edit YAML 3 times without any errors. And once from scratch. And because it was so hard in the past, I have to admit I enjoyed it a bit because, I did some tweaks and I got, with the dash that is actually an array. So I understood this and I formatted the text without any help from Visual Studio Code, just by tabs. And it worked. So I submitted to Kubernetes or OpenShift and it worked. And this was like, back then, if you try to edit deployment descriptors without xdoclet, this was the same enjoyment, If you just had VI and 2 megs of deployment descriptors and it worked. So I say, okay. It was, nice feeling. But
I do have to ask you, how did you manage to get a YAML from scratch to work without any IDE support? Did you format the file manually?
Oh,
Or you copy? The question is, did you type character by character, or do you copy and paste it from here and there?
Yeah, I have to admit, I transformed the file. So it was there were route services, deployment, build configs, and config maps. And what I did, I created from that a template. So I've wrapped that.
So that's
but this was a serious
right?
transformation, I would say.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, YAML is fine when it's presented for you to read.
Yes.
And that's it. But for writing, for maintaining, for tweaking, for editing, for applying changes, and even merging changes to a YAML file, those things are painful.
Yes.
And mostly because of the white space hell. The second issue is the schema support. There's no schema support. You have to use a JSON schema, use some tools to validate on top of a JSON schema. In the YAML file, you cannot specify inside the YAML file what is the JSON schema that you want to validate against. There's no standard property in the YAML file for that. You can only say API version, which is a custom property that people put whatever they want. So YAML is fine for reading, for printing data. But honestly, so many formats are fine for doing that. I mean, CSV is great for reading, just like a spreadsheet. At the end of the day, you download the CSV file with your configuration, and you can see on Excel. Great. But, the only thing I hate about YAML is the thing about editing YAML files.
But this is the problem with me.
IDE,
I have to do it all the time,
Yeah, well, so when people ask me, but YAML is so easy to write. Well, YAML it's not a YAML that it's easy to write. It's the specific file format of YAML configuration file that you're using that may be easy to write because you're already used to it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Kubernetes deployment files.
Yeah.
Some people already know how the schema in their heads, right? They have already memorized much of the major configuration properties of a deployment file.
What I'm also curious, people are arguing that in the YAML it's very important to have comments, and I have to say, I never saw a comment in YAML, almost never. So what I saw in Kubernetes, there was never a commented YAML file. So I say, okay, what's the point? Why are there people just not using JSON? I'm just curious,
Yeah, well, JSON does not have comment support.
Yeah,
You have to use some invalid property to write a comment. The other issue with JSON is also the schema. You cannot specify inside the JSON. There's no standard way of telling inside a JSON file what is the schema for that JSON file, right? So those are the problems. And back to the IDE, the other issue I find is you have to have a specific plugin or extension for a particular type of YAML file or JSON file, or maybe there are some extensions that allow you to map manually. Oh, this file name pattern maps to this schema. And then the IDE may be able to help you out, but it's not perfect. So that's my complaint to YAML is this. To compose YAML files is a pain in the butt because the tooling support is far away from where XML is, and mostly because of lack of schema support, proper schema support in those configuration files.
And I also what I remember was there was another problem
that you can tell where the schema is.
I had a problem with types. This was
there was Boolean types in YAML are painful.
Yeah, something like a string was interpreted something else, and it was really hard to find error. But I just thought, you really like YAML, and I thought the discussion is going to be more interesting than this. But back to our episode 29. So I think since our 29th episode, I'm really referring to runtimes and not servers. So this was like we had an interesting discussion about runtime servers, and I thought a lot about that. And I think things like Quarkus or Helidon, they are true runtimes because there's only one thing which they are shipping with, and even Whitefly, Pyaras, and Open Liberties, I never shipped several deployments in one server. So for me now they're actually servers, but actually runtimes because the server part is not used widely anymore. So this was an interesting discussion we had, and also about the serverless. So what are you doing these days? Still, I saw you are your title changed, right? I don't know whether it's good or bad.
It is good, but frightening at the same time for me personally.
Okay.
Yes. Last year we completed the acquisition of JClarity, a company that was formed by Martin Verberg, who leads the London Java community user group, and a couple other gentlemen in the Java ecosystem and the Java community, like Kirk Pepperdine, John Oliver, George Adams, and some of these folks also lead the Adopt OpenJDK project, which Microsoft also sponsors since 2018. So once we completed the acquisition last year, a new Java engineering group was formed at Microsoft, and I joined that team as a product manager to help establish the usage of Java at Microsoft internally, and also to help our both internal customers and external customers on how to optimize Java workloads, especially in cloud environments. And we are leveraging some of those JClarity tools that were acquired. We continue to work with Adopt OpenJDK, and we are collaborating with the OpenJDK project, sending contributions. We sent, since December last year, we've sent about 12 patches, I believe, 12 patches to OpenJDK project. And we continue to do so. We are doing a lot of work, a lot of internal work and finding ways that OpenGK can be enhanced, can be improved, whether it's by fixing bugs that are impacting our internal usage of Java, or might impact customers running Java on Azure. So that's the purpose of the Java engineering group at Microsoft. It's a large group, and we have a large usage of Java at Microsoft. People don't realize I believe we have. Well, I cannot say right now the actual number, but I can safely say that we have thousands of Java developers working at Microsoft as employees, like full-time employees, Java developers, and across all Microsoft.
Is it more than Oracle?
I don't know. Maybe we have more Java developers than Oracle has lawyers. Maybe. Okay. I don't know. But just to make sure, I have friends at Oracle, both in the engineering side and in the legal side. I have friends in the legal team at Oracle. So internal use of Java at Microsoft is interesting. We have a few things that I can definitely talk about. One is Minecraft. People forget about Minecraft sometimes. Minecraft has both the client Java edition. Microsoft is investing in other platforms, in other editions of Minecraft. They recently released a version of Minecraft not written in Java, and a new runtime with support for better modern graphic cards. So you actually have like the water in Minecraft is sleek. It's like an Xbox Turismo quality, and it is very awesome. But the Java edition is still very popular because it allows modifications. It allows mods to be developed and added to a Minecraft server that people can run themselves.
Wait a second. So, was Minecraft cross-compiled, or you know how it happened? What they did?
I think it was developed from scratch. Wow, the new version.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Maybe C++, maybe a combination of C++ and C#. I don't know the details, but it's what I know is it's not Java.
Okay.
Which is fine because they are able to use the knowledge of a team that builds games in different with different platforms, different runtimes, and leverage the features of the modern new graphic cards.
Yeah, sure. So, but if you download Minecraft from the regular page, it's still Java, right?
You have to go to the Minecraft website, and then you're going to see the options. You have this option, that option, and then there's the Java option, the Java edition option.
Because,
So we still run servers at Microsoft, Minecraft servers with the Java version. So you can, if you download Minecraft and you say, I want to connect to a public server, you're going to see the Microsoft servers, and those are running Java in our data centers. Another use of Java at Microsoft that's big is Yammer.com. It's a communication tool that Microsoft acquired years ago, and the whole backend is implemented in Java, and they even use the Drop Wizard framework. I'm sure you're familiar with that. The original creators of Yammer also were, I think, were also the creators of Drop Wizard. So there's some history over there. Finally, one of the biggest internal customers or internal use of Java is LinkedIn. So whenever you are looking for a job, whenever you're looking for messages on LinkedIn from recruiters, whenever you are searching for your friends and colleagues, all that backend is implemented in Java. LinkedIn is massive. And people also forget sometimes that LinkedIn was the original creator of Kafka.
Yeah.
And some other Apache projects, LinkedIn also leads the development. So
there was a Voldemort, right? Voldemort and I think the Cassandra.
Yes, correct. So the use of Java at Microsoft is big. Now I mentioned mostly companies that Microsoft acquired, right? But on the Azure cloud, some services were developed from scratch. And without Java, they wouldn't exist. And those are mostly the big data services. Azure HD Insight, which deploys and runs Apache Spark, Apache Hadoop, Azure Synapse, which is a service similar to Google BigQuery.
Mm-hmm.
So also deploys several JVMs to make it work. So, use of Java at Microsoft is big. And finally, I don't want to get into the non-technical debate, but Microsoft is going to sell an Android phone coming soon. I think the name is Android Duo. So it's a dual display cell phone. And it's quite nice. You have a big screen, and you can have multiple Android applications running at the same time. And because it's Android, you write Java code, you write Kotlin code. If you talk to Gluon, you can deploy JavaFX applications on Android. So it's quite a nice platform. And Microsoft is growing on that space as well. So to summarize, the usage of Java at Microsoft is big. And we depend on the technology, and that's why we have a Java engineering group to make the platform continue to be successful and contribute back based on internal usage that we have in a way that helps both ourselves, our customers, but also the Java community. So we are in this together.
And you are the principal product manager for Java. So what's your responsibility then?
For now, it's really number one to see and tell that story, Java at Microsoft. Second is to help with with Martin's team in helping with these OpenJDK collaborations and contributions, helping with connecting and working with our partners like Oracle, Red Hat, and Pivotal. And also, we are exploring performance analysis tools that could help developers enhance their applications to either make their applications better or at the very least save costs, even in the cloud space. So we are, in a way, we are working on tools, and we are working on things that will help our customers spend less money in the cloud, which that sounds counterproductive, but it's actually important because we want to make sure that customers don't waste their money.
Because Sun Microsystems worked all the time on that, right?
Exactly.
Nice. The only thing which is interesting, so your previous title was Azure DevRel, and now you're principal product manager for Java. So if you ask a young guy what is more sexy, probably they would say Azure DevRel is a nicer title than Java principal manager.
Funny thing, the only time I actually had a DevRel full-time job was here at Microsoft.
Okay.
All the other jobs I had in the past, all the time before I joined Microsoft, I joined Microsoft early 2018. All my professional career before that, I never actually had a DevRel job role. It was always product management or software developer or software architect or lead or whatever. Never DevRel per se. So DevRel, it's like sometimes it's like another thing that people can also do, whether they have the DevRel job or not. So you do it. And if your boss, if your company, if your manager is cool with it, you go and do it, right? And you try to balance that with the actual work that you need to do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's mutually beneficial for yourself, individual, and the company. And that was my case before Microsoft. And that is now my case in this new team here in the Java Engineering Group. I do this PM work, but I also kind of do this DevRel work. Yeah. So it's fun. I like it.
Okay, regardless, DevRel. So let's say I'm Java developer and I would like to start with Microsoft Azure. So what is actually to do? Do I have, to create an account or how to start with your stuff? Let's say I have a small MicroProfile service. Let's say this is more realistic, and I would like to push something to Kubernetes. So
right. So there are several ways of deploying Java applications in any cloud. You pick your cloud of choice, and you're gonna find at least 5 different services that can run Java workloads in any cloud.
Yeah.
On Azure, we can go with the most application hosting service. It's a standalone, self-contained, all your dependencies, Java application like Spring Boot or MicroProfile Quarkus or Micronaut or Drop Wizard or whatever, that you just do Java minus jar and you have your application up and running. Azure App Service is good for that. You deploy your jar and you say, maybe you add some Java JVM parameters, how much memory you want. You select the shape size of your compute power, and you're done. It will expose your service at a certain port number that you also specify, and your application is up and running with a load balancer, maybe storage, maybe custom DNS that you can set, and monitoring that also comes out of the box, which is quite nice. You don't do anything. Just create a new application, deploy your file, and run. We do have on the same service. Azure App.
Before I start, I have to decide which JDK to choose. So you provide me a predefined platform.
We provide by default. We use our partnership with Azure Systems, and you get Azure JDK, which is commercially supported for free as part of your subscription with Microsoft.
Just the Zulu one.
And it's the Zulu one. It's not. It is based on the Zulu Community Edition, but it's actually a distribution that's specific for Azure that may contain patches and fixes that may not still available on the Community Edition for a certain period of time. It's all about commercial support. It's all about handling customer escalations as fast as possible. So if you have a problem, you open a support ticket. It gets fixed, gets shipped, and then later on it goes to the Community Edition or upstream.
And this is called Azure Service, right? Java Azure Service. This is the name of the service.
It's called Microsoft Azure App Service.
App Service, okay. So I can deploy whatever executable jar I like. I can just SCP to your cloud and
yeah, you can use a Maven plugin. You can deploy from the IDE. We have plugins for Eclipse and IntelliJ. You can also just right-click and publish the Maven plugin. And we also have an Azure CLI that can be used for automated deployments quite nicely.
So I always ask attendees or colleagues or whoever, do you actually know any use case for fat jars or Uber jars? Because, for me, it doesn't make any sense. But this could be one, if you have some dedicated service, for me, it's like bare metal service. So actually, for me, it looks like, a dedicated machine with pre-installed Java, so I can push the jar and start it, right? Yeah.
And you can optimize later. Once you create the environment on app service, you can customize it. You can deploy your dependencies, and then you just deploy your application. Okay. So those dependencies will stay inside the storage, and then you just upload the actual business application, right?
Which is perfect for Quarkus.
I would say which is perfect for any Java framework these days. That because uploading a fat jar to the cloud, 100 megabytes, is not cool, right? No. People shouldn't be doing that anymore.
Yeah, but Helidon on Quarkus doing this out of the box. So usually you have like a thin...
Oh, yeah.
So you can have the thin jar and the lib. You can push lib once, and then, the thin jar just if something changes. So it's Docker-like experience, I would say.
Yeah, and it's still on app service. The other way that you can deploy applications is using web applications, Tomcat-based web applications.
Okay.
You just deploy a WAR file, and we set up Tomcat for you.
Okay.
So app service is quite nice for especially young developers or new developers experimenting cloud services. You just build your jar or your WAR file, and you just deploy, and it's up and running.
But why young developers? I mean, if you have mid-range business and you would like to run 4 instances, just fine.
I'm absolutely. I'm not limiting the service to particular use cases. I'm just saying that across all the possible ways of deploying Java workloads on Azure, app service is the ideal one for people who are exploring and learning about cloud-based development or cloud-based deployments. So you don't want a young developer writing YAML file, do you, Adam?
No, it's actually after a few weeks, it's fine, right? It's fun, but yeah.
So that's my point, right? You want to make it as easy as possible. We also have a serverless service called Azure Functions. You write a Java class, you put some annotations, and you deploy a jar file. That jar file can be very small with just business logic. Right now, today, if you want to use some library, some dependency on your Azure function, you have to pack that in your deployment file. So there's no way today to set your dependencies, for example, Commons, Apache Commons, or whatever util library that you want to use. There's no way today to put that on Azure Functions storage or somehow and then reuse that. You have to pack in the zip file and re-upload all the time. But it's still quite nice because most of the time what you really want to do is just process some business logic in your Azure function and send the data, get the data somewhere and send back to some other point, right?
Yeah, from the architectural perspective, so the Azure Functions were for me more or less like message-driven beans. They are listening for a queue or whatever, like integration point. But I wouldn't.
Correct.
I would not use functions for as a general programming model. It's just.
Yeah, some people like to build web applications using Azure Functions or serverless functions with HTTP triggers, HTTP endpoints. But my opinion is that's a very nice way to demonstrate serverless, but it's not the actual useful use case. What you really want to use it for is for messaging, for integration, for API consumption, perhaps something like that. Yeah. Not as an entry point for a web application for a customer. Yeah. And we have Java 11 support coming out this year on Azure Functions. So today we use Java 8. Okay. But we are going to add Java 11 support soon. The other services that we have are on both ends, more like infrastructure, compute, and then we have one that is more platform as a service, similar to Azure App Service, but specifically for Java applications. So let me talk about the infrastructure first. Yeah. On infrastructure, you have VMs, create a VM, log in, and do whatever you want. We have two container-based services. One is Azure Container Instances, which is similar to the Azure Compute VM service. You give a Docker image and you run a container, and that's it. In the VM world, you might have a VM template and you start VM, right? In Azure Container Instance, you give a Docker image and you create a Docker container instance, and you don't scale. You don't. There's no load balancer. There's no orchestration. Nothing. It's just like, here's my Docker image. Create a container and give me an IP address or a URL to access that service running inside that container. Okay, and that's it. Which is actually great for people who want to develop Docker images and just deploy a Docker image. No orchestration, no nothing. Just give me that application running. And then we have Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes Service.
Wait a second. But could I start two images of the same instance? There's really no way to load balance that because, No,
you can. What you can do is create on Azure Container Instances Service. What you can do is have a container group. Yeah. So you can have inside a container group, you can have multiple containers, all of them based on different images. And one of them is the only one that is publicly serving the internet. Okay. So, for example, you can have a small application. You have the front end, you have the back end, you have the database, all running like 3 containers. Very basic stuff. Yeah. And it's charged by the second or by the hour, something like that. Yeah. So it's the price is very similar to the VM price, because it's also calculated based on the amount of memory and CPU that you allocate for the containers. So it's quite nice and easy to use. You deploy the Docker image and then you say ACI, run this image. Boom, done. Now, if you do want scalability, orchestration, security, and whatnot, and YAML files, then you go to Azure Kubernetes Service. Yeah. Then you have the full-fledged Kubernetes experience, your Kubernetes cluster from your command line using kubectl, and you are good to go. And it's very everything very automated. Upgrading Kubernetes versions, all the Linux distributions inside are patched and maintained by Microsoft, just like you would expect from a managed Kubernetes service. We did one thing recently. If you deploy a Java application to Azure Kubernetes instances and also Azure Container instances, we are able to monitor the JVM out of the box for you without you having to make any changes to your container, to your JVM, to your application, or dependencies, or nothing. We inject a Java agent that will automatically monitor that JVM and send the data back to Azure Monitor, another service. Now, this is not enabled by default, of course not, because it has always some performance overhead. But you can go to the Azure dashboard and just click on a button, say, hey, enable monitoring, and boom, all of your JVMs will be monitored automatically. That's a great experience for developers who want to see what's going on, but they don't want to waste time configuring JVMs and agents and whatnot.
I actually used this AKS, this Azure Kubernetes Service, multiple times, and it worked fine. It was actually almost identical to OpenShift or Kubernetes experience. It was exactly the same for me. And what's interesting, the container stuff, what I'm still curious, because what you could do is actually, if you just had 2 containers and 1 HI proxy as a load balancer, this would be fine for a lots of applications. We have some mission critical applications which are running exactly in this way on premise on my clients. And I think for it's not about scalability. It's more about HA. So I think with 2 runtimes you can handle a huge load, also several thousand transactions per second. The only problem is if they would like to have failover. So I think there should be a way to do this, because you can do it with stock Docker. If you have 2 Docker containers and a Docker network, you can have another container, what you already mentioned, as a load balancer. This could be HA proxy, which sees both containers, and you are set. So I think it should be possible to deploy such a thing, right?
Oh, it is. So in the Kubernetes world, you can deploy...
Not in Kubernetes. I mean in container. Kubernetes, it is set. So it worked out of the box. So in Kubernetes, we already did it. In Kubernetes, you have the ingress. I forgot actually.
Ingress controllers.
Yeah, ingress controllers, and it worked actually as expected. So you don't have to do anything. But in the container world, I didn't use the container service at Microsoft. So I set up container on my own servers, and this was very, very easy. This was a hack. So we use HA proxy, and via the container name, you had the networking. So I think with a minor tool,
you could. It is possible. I won't say it's not possible. It is possible. I'll just say that it might not be the best option here.
I get you.
You can go to the VM to create VMs and deploy containers inside your VMs, but then you have to manage the VMs yourself. So once you use HA proxy to do some of those tweaks and workarounds, now you're managing HA proxy manually by yourself. So that's why Kubernetes is nice, because you deploy the egress controller, and maybe it's a commercial product, maybe it's something that is a de facto standard or something that most people are already using and it just works. But it's not something that you have to manually manage. You just set up once, you set up the routes, and you're good to go.
Are you also aware of the MicroProfile support? Because as I remember, this Microsoft Azure has a dedicated page, about MicroProfile with the config and the stuff.
Yeah, I'm not aware of these new advancements in MicroProfile, but yes, we did create a few documentation pages from MicroProfile to help a few customers, a few users that came to us and asked for it. We haven't seen yet much of an uptake on MicroProfile on Azure. I'm sure there is people doing it. But we haven't actually heard from them directly. So that's why we haven't made much progress on that documentation page. But if you know people using and deploying, and if there is anything missing, just let me know. We are happy to help.
For instance, my clients they're using
The
already Azure, and
okay.
but if we ship a MicroProfile application to Azure, it's just a Java service. There is
Right.
there is actually no how to call it. There is no requirement for Azure to do something specific if you are running MicroProfile apps on Azure. What I saw, what I saw in the Azure case, what you get out on top of the usual support, you can, for instance, inject credentials with MicroProfile. So there is the MicroProfile is used as a binding between the app and additional services from Azure, which makes more interesting. So this is why probably it's a lesser known feature, because what usually my clients are doing, they are just pushing MicroProfile stuff to Azure, and it just works, and they don't even know that they could even integrate more tightly using MicroProfile with Azure.
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity to create those MicroProfile extensions, right? The bindings. So we have an example of Azure Key Vault on the documentation page, which is quite handy. Mm-hmm. And I think more could be done. I'm sure there could be a plugin to easily enable integration with Azure AD for security, or Azure Storage, or Azure API management for publishing, exposing the API endpoint automatically. I mean, there are many things that could be done. We are just not. Honestly, we're just not being asked. People are not asking us, "Hey, can you do this?" And if nobody's asking,
I think there are two things which are crucial, and one is the credentials, and this comes later, because what you usually do on Kubernetes, you can ship the deployment configuration, and you can inject, for instance, username, passwords as secrets. But this is not secure, because if someone has access to the pods, it sees the secrets. And then my clients ask, what about injection? And then, the cloud integration kicks in, because you can actually inject secrets in more secure way than Kubernetes can. This is the one thing. And this comes later. So at the beginning, no one asks about that, because everyone is happy it runs in the cloud, So, and then the next thing is...
It's always like 3 months later when they realize,
exactly.
We have to use security.
And there's another killer feature, and I get more and more questions about that, is how to authenticate and how to get the JSON Web Token. So you have, an AD, Active Directory, or whatever you have in Microsoft.
Yep.
And what is the flow? So you would like to log in, get the username and password, and then you get the JSON Web Token, and then we are set, we are happy. But this first initial flow, this is always cloud specific, I get lots of questions regarding AWS Cognito and so on. This is what comes to this is nothing to do with MicroProfile, because in MicroProfile, if you have the JSON Web Token, you are happy, But how to get the JSON Web Token? This is about the cloud. And I think these two killer things has to be set. And this is at the beginning, again, doesn't matter, because developers hack something, they will pull the JSON Web Token from wherever, just behind the scenes. But if it's well integrated, and actually... in the recent AirHacks TV, I think in 2 episodes, I got the same question regarding AWS, how to get the JSON Web Token from Amazon Cloud. And you will get the question also as well in one point of time, because people this AWS is a little bit older, so there are more apps, but it will come to you as well. And the last one, what will happen to you comes, I think, at the end is how do so MicroProfile applications are exposing per default Prometheus metrics. And is there a way where the Prometheus finds these pods automatically, gathers the metrics, and does something with it? So this is also, which usually comes later. Therefore, I don't think you need to know MicroProfile support. What you need is like an interface between the cloud and additional authentication, monitoring, and the infrastructure, or open tracing as well.
Are you familiar with the project OpenTelemetry?
Yes. I mean, this is Kubernetes Foundation, and this is implemented by MicroProfile. So OpenTelemetry is the new one, and MicroProfile implements, for instance, open tracing, which was about the spans. Then the monitoring is the metrics, which was Prometheus. And I think OpenTelemetry they merged 2 specs, right? They merged the metrics and the open tracing one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the details of those open source projects. What I do know is that Azure install our monitoring solution already. The Java agent that I mentioned before that is injected automatically for you, that agent is based on OpenTelemetry. So whatever is running inside the JVM that is supported by OpenTelemetry will get exposed in the App Insights dashboard, the Application Insights dashboard. So that should also include, I'm sure it includes JAX-RS, for example.
Yeah.
So that if you have MicroProfile application using JAX-RS as your REST framework, then it will get exposed on App Insights because of OpenTelemetry.
This is fine.
So we already have that capability in.
What comes on top of it, just as an idea, this is also widely ignored by developers at the very beginning of the application. But what you get are business metrics.
Right.
You know, how many books we I don't know printed today, or how many fraud attempts were there. And what we are doing, we are just exposing counters, and they have nothing to do with Java. You get just counter sold books, payment processed, or I don't know. Shopping carts created.
Let me ask you this. Does it make sense to add those metrics in the application?
It makes absolute sense because...
Why not having... Instead of having the application pushing those data points just for monitoring purposes, why not having something pulling that data from the database?
The application, it does... So this is MicroProfile, but actually it's OpenTelemetry or OpenMetrics. So this is Cloud Native Foundation. And the idea is there's a process, it's nothing to do even with Java, exposes some metrics, and they are gathered by Prometheus, which was standardized by the OpenMetrics. So the Prometheus pulls the data, and Prometheus is the time series database.
Right, but if Prometheus is pulling that data from the application, it means that the application needs to have some logic running, and if the application is Java, that logic is running inside the JVM to expose that data point.
Yeah.
My question is...
No, there's no logic.
My question is...
This is MicroProfile. So what you have to...
Well, when I say logic is that there is some code running inside of the JVM to expose that data, whether the user wrote it manually or not.
Yeah. But
That's my point.
What you have to do, let's imagine you are in the printing service of the books. So if the book is printed, you have to say registry.counter inc. Done. There's one.
No, fair. So I just want to pause for a second and debate whether that metric should be coming from the application or shouldn't it be coming from the database? Because here's the thing.
Some applications don't have a database,
Well, there's always a database somewhere.
Yeah.
You order a book. There is a message in Kafka or Cassandra or a record on the relational database somewhere. There is that information will be somewhere. My point with I really want to debate this because I don't know the answer, and I don't see many people debating this. So I want to debate. Whatever metric that you put in your application for fancy dashboards. Oh, we have Prometheus, we have Grafana. It exposes how many people are currently looking at this particular book. I mean, that's great, but does it really help? And honestly, to have that monitoring, you have an overhead on your JVM because you have extra code that is only good for you, not for the customer. It's only good for your observability, but it's not helping the customer, which means it is wasting CPU and memory from the JVM to serve more customers, to increase throughput, to reduce latency, to process more transactions, and to ultimately sell more books. So why are we adding that level of monitoring in the JVM, in Java applications, or in any application, if that information could be coming from elsewhere?
Okay, the app, because it often cannot come from elsewhere. In what developers are doing, they are exposing technical metrics. How often the method was invoked, how fast it was, what was the average in no time, which is pointless. What I'm talking about is every, let's say microservice, and we build a microservice has some essential functionality. And every component with the essential functionality has to at least expose a counter whether something is working or not. And I give you an example. So in one project, there were IoT devices which send data to a central service. And the developers just exposed transactions per second. And no one actually knew what it means, transaction per second. And then we introduced metrics like, how many such messages per second were processed, because message was a business term, and this changed everything. We knew then from business perspective, we are able to process, let's say, 100,000 messages per second, and the message was a term defined by the business, and they say, okay, more than this, we have to scale or not, and then we had a metric, over time, an average, and we saw, okay, if this changes in any direction, we know that there's something wrong with the system. Give you another example. As a crucial system based on messaging. So I was actually in charge of the architecture. So again, from day one, we have to expose business metrics. But the business metrics were, for instance, if we received a message and the message was of wrong type, we increase a counter. A message with wrong type arrived, a no poisoned message. So if the message was processed, another counter. And what we did during the stress test phase, we just monitored the counters and stuff like Prometheus. It gathers the averages. This is the point. What you would like to have is average over time, whether your system behaves correctly. And in my point, it is only possible with business metrics because, how many transactions, rollbacks, this is too technical. This is really hard. Like in car, you would like, to see how fast your car goes and not how warm the engine is. I don't care about that, So
technically you shouldn't care because if it's going too high, it's going to blow up. But
not my problem.
I'm not against business metrics. Maybe you read that wrong. What I'm saying is the certain metrics shouldn't be coming from the application.
Sure.
So message. Let's take your example of transactions versus messages.
Yeah.
Transaction is something that is very technical. Maybe how many HTTP requests happened, but one HTTP request does not translate to one business message. Maybe one business message actually translates to 15 HTTP requests.
Exactly.
Right. So okay, I get that point. But that business message is still happening somewhere. Maybe it's going to Kafka. Maybe it's going to a queue. Maybe it's being recorded on the database. Maybe that business metric is also happening somewhere else in the system, not in the actual application that serves the end user.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are able to get that business metric from elsewhere asynchronously in a way that you can see the trend, but without impacting the performance of your application or adding up complexity to your application, you're still good. You have that business metric.
Yeah.
And once that business metric triggers some yellow red flag, then maybe you trigger something into your Java application, into your business application to say, hey, something is not right. Enable diagnostics.
Yep.
And let's figure out what's happening. And only at that time, your application will see like, okay, database is telling us or Kafka is telling us we are not serving enough business messages at the right performance. Yep. Let's enable diagnostics to see what's going on. Maybe it's the garbage collector that is pausing for too long. Maybe it's the threads are queuing too much. Maybe the CPU is being eaten up by some other application inside a container. So let's figure that out.
Yeah.
But the most important thing here is business metrics shouldn't always have to come from inside the actual application serving the end user.
No,
they could be
always
observed elsewhere.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, if we are exposing metrics in my Java applications, we're starting with business metrics or nothing. Because I don't have, to expose. I absolutely don't care how many transactions we have or not have, because it's pointless. So you mentioned Kafka, and Kafka is a trick because if you have Kafka, the single truth of everything is in Kafka. This changes everything, because in a Kafka project, what I can do, I can, for instance, apply statistics on a Kafka topic, sliding window, whatever, and I have my business statistics. But what I would do is, for instance, I would use Kafka streams, look to the topic and then expose the statistics via counters directly or gauges. Right. And then you could gather these statistics from Prometheus. So this is one possibility. But this is not all projects have Kafka right now.
Okay. You don't have to. Kafka is just an example. If let's say you have a basic application, like an application and the database, right? Let's say Postgres. You can get your business metric by running constantly over your table on Postgres.
Yeah, you're right. So, but probably what you would do is, to get, the advantage of the nice tools and metrics, that you will probably go, to the database, expose the counter from the table as a gauge and expose as a Prometheus matrix.
Yes, absolutely. You would expose that metric in your dashboard. What I'm saying is people are so, I think developers are so eager to see those metrics. And because developers have control over the source code of the application, it's a lot easier for them to add that telemetry, that business telemetry, into their application instead of trying to convince someone to add that telemetry to something else.
Yeah, of course.
So that's why.
Yeah. They give you a story. So there was a Java user group meeting in Hamburg. This was like 3 years ago, I think, or 4. And, back then, Hystrix was a big thing. So everyone wanted to have Hystrix. And I said, okay, it's just pointless. Why I need, pointless dashboards? And they came to me and they said, okay, look, I'm a consultant. So if I just create, some dashboards with Hystrix, everything looks more professional. So there's nothing actually to do for me, but there are no nice diagrams. And I say, look, but what the diagrams are saying, because if you're just exposing garbage collector or whatever, how many methods were invoked, it looks nice, but it's pointless, and I say, I know. Yeah, I know.
There has to be a...
Yeah, but they say, but
there has to be a correlation.
Yeah, but my clients expect some dashboards. They say, okay, then build something. And on that note, I was in a task force in a project, and they said, okay, we are not sure what the system is doing. So, okay, then we need some monitoring. Say, no, we have a lots of dashboards, but we have no idea what's going on. And I was in the war room, and the main dashboard, was, what it was? It was a garbage collector. And they look at the garbage collector behavior and they ask me, does it look right? I was like, I have no idea. If the over time,
it looks right.
Yeah,
it looks right. It's doing the garbage collection. It looks right.
It looks pretty. Over time, if it's flat, it is okay, but it's absolutely pointless. And they asked me, what do you like to see? I was like, at least I would like to see, the successful use cases and not successful use cases. This is what I will start with. So how many things happened right and not right? And they say, you are genius, how to come up with this idea? Because I answered, because I have no idea what the system is doing. And what you said with a database, you are right, but what you shouldn't forget, we are in the middle of transition. Some in microservice architectures, we have often, microservice database. We have a lots of databases in one application. This can happen. And then this is harder to find. Yeah.
Well, you deploy those monitoring components within the database. Every time you spin up a database, you make sure that database has a component that exposes counters to your dashboard in the same way that you do with applications.
Yeah,
no big deal.
Yeah, you could do it.
I think.
You are passionate about monitoring. So you are working on monitoring right now?
We are doing some work with monitoring. Yes.
Okay. This is why you are so passionate about the topic.
Because the more I read about, the more I'm concerned that people are not monitoring the right way. And you are totally right. People are monitoring the things that don't matter. That's I think the lesson number 1. Monitor what matters.
Yeah.
And monitoring how much memory your code is using. Yeah, that's nice to have. But unless you know what your code is doing, does it matter how much memory is using it? Maybe it's using maybe your application is using that much memory because it has to, right?
The coolest
because it needs.
The coolest health check I ever saw, it was like 2 years ago in a code review. there was a health check, and they checked, the size of the hard disk, and this was in the cloud. And I asked myself, why hard disk? Do you have any hard disk, or what's the point? We don't. And there was not even a file access. There was just, and they say, yeah, they found it somewhere, and they thought it's a good idea to check whether they have enough space, to run the application. It's like, look, we are in Kubernetes. We have not even, persistent volume, nothing. And they say, okay, then they delete it. But they started, with something to see. And this was really funny. But the problem is Agile a little bit. Or not Agile, how to call it these days? Scrum. If you look at Scrum project, so there is a Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master only cares about the process. The product manager doesn't know nothing about metrics. It doesn't care. So he has the user stories, and the user stories are business driven. And the developers, this is the idea, the developers should actually provide a monitoring thing. But the developers in some companies, there's not like, one internal team. There are developers from all over the place, and they are really happy that at the end, something will run, and whether there are monitoring stuff or not, no one cares at all. And because the expectation is, in cloud native, that we get the funky diagrams, then what they do is, at the end, they use the MicroProfile, counted or timed, and all methods are counted or timed, and everything is exposed, but nothing meaningful. And after, 1 year in production and something goes south, then we delete all the metrics and expose meaningful metrics. And what you should start with is just simple counters, very simple counters. And in my opinion, you should do this, from the day one. Why? To have some experience, to gather experience, what it actually means. What the numbers are meaning in production, because if they escalate in production in any direction, we can have automatic alerts.
You are right. Applications should go live with some metrics.
Yeah.
But they should be, in my opinion, they should be as minimal as possible and as meaningful as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
So you said meaningful, but meaningful metrics.
Yes.
So what does your application do? What is the core business of your application? Oh, my application gets an image that the customer uploads and then stores in the database. That's what my microservice does. That's the only thing that my microservice does. Okay, fine. So you record one business metric, images stored in the database per second.
Perfect.
That's it.
Or just count how many are stored, because per second this can happen in more Prometheus later. Just increase the number.
Yes. Yes, correct. But now here comes the catch. Who reports that metric? Is it the application or is it the database?
For me, as an application developer, if I have to write the Java code, right? And what I would just do, I wouldn't write it to a database. I would just increase the counter in the application, because this is what I did. And if I don't have the database, I would have Kafka that would just write the message out. But I would say, from my perspective, I'm the app, I just did it, and this is already helpful. And in the database, this is more like, I would say, not how to call it, not KPIs almost. This is like the
What if you scale this microservice to multiple instances? Now you have two applications with different counters.
Yeah, let's say we have 4 microservices, which 4 instances of the same microservice. They are scaled. So
right.
Then it is interesting to know whether the load balancing system even is working. So if you gather all the counters from 4 instances, you will see, whether the counter is even whether the load is evenly spread across the instances.
That could also be gathered from the database. Inside the database, you could have the microservice instance ID that created that record. You can get that from the database.
Why you don't like the idea,
Because it wastes resources.
Okay.
Now your JVM has to manage a counter, an object in memory, just for showing the counter that is not even used by the user. The user doesn't see that counter. The application is managing something that is completely internal.
That's your point. Okay.
And of course, this is doesn't show the implications, but the more telemetry you add, the more business metrics you add to your application, if that thing could not be done elsewhere, that's fine. That's okay. For example, if you don't have Kafka, or if your database is weird and there's no other way, sure, put that in your application. But if there is a way to get that business metric in another place, do it. Because what you want is your application to be 100% dedicated for serving your users. You don't want performance overhead. You don't want to consume memory. Imagine, okay, let's take this stupid example of image uploader, right? Let's say you have to scale from one image uploader service instance to 1,000.
Yeah.
And let's just imagine that to do all this telemetry of that business metric of how many images are being uploaded, let's say that this adds up 1 megabyte of memory just to manage this thing because of class path dependencies and your business code and your whatever happens within your code. Now you have 1 gigabyte of memory being consumed just to expose a counter. And 1 gigabyte of memory sounds cheap in cloud days, but you multiply that across 1,000 different other services that have similar metric. Now you're wasting 100 gigabytes of memory per month, and you're paying for that.
Yeah,
so
but what
you could extract that metric from the database or from Kafka or from somewhere else.
But
why
if
are you wasting memory on that?
But if you do it from database, I think it will be more expensive than just increasing a counter in Java. Because in Java, really, the metric is just a hash map with one slot.
It depends on the database. It depends on the database. Make sure you use a good database. That's all. And make sure you write a good code in the database.
Yeah,
you have optimistic locking. You have read-only tables.
But if you're writing the code in Java, it would be larger than just hash map increase counter. If you're writing the code in a database, so would be a way to say from outside, like you have augmented database, which you say look at the table and expose the counter. This would be probably different, but this could be different because in one database. It's an interesting discussion, but yeah. And
again, this is a stupid example. Just trying to escalate the use case here to see the bigger picture, right?
There will be no escalation. The first escalation was YAML, so now I know how you are thinking. So don't expect any escalation.
I truly want to see customers spending less cloud resources in their applications. I mean, if your application can run with 100 megabytes of memory, then run with 100 megabytes of memory.
Yeah.
Don't add meaningless, wasteful monitoring to your application, which will increase to 200 megabytes of memory. Sure, that's good. We get more revenue, but it's bad for the customer because now they cannot deploy new applications because all their budget is being wasted on meaningless metrics.
Yeah.
That could be extracted elsewhere. That's my point.
Back to the metrics. So what my best practice currently is, so if you have a microservice, let's say image upload service, and you would have upload and download one microservice to save memory, right? So then you would have one image management service, and inside the image, there would be 2 packages. And the packages, one is upload and one download with business names. So this is how to structure the code. So what I would expect, because you have already 2 business packages, that every of the package has 1 counter. And whether the counter comes from database or not, I also don't care. Currently, this is MicroProfile code. So this is what I will do. And these metrics are essential, and anything else is optional. So I don't care about memory and transactions and whatever. I just would like to see whether the application... So, no. So that's all. And interesting point with the database. We should know.
I mean, people who are using Kafka, they use Kafka to those metrics, to get those metrics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Most architectures that have Kafka as part of the solution, they get all the metrics from Kafka streaming. Yeah. They do their KSQL, the Kafka queries. They bombard Kafka because everything is not nice and on memory from there, right? But the important thing here in the Kafka case is all those metrics they are not in the application, which means your application is 100% dedicated for processing user input, for processing data, processing system, whatever.
Okay.
And you don't get garbage collection triggered because of all those metrics. You don't get long GC pauses that are cleaning up objects from your telemetry that would impact your business application and so on.
You get them because in Kafka, in order to do so, you will have to deploy a Kafka Stream application, which is a Java process bot. The difference is the Kafka metrics. Let's say we have messages. Yeah, you go running and you run somewhere, right? So you're emitting messages, and I would like to see, how many such messages per second are emitted. So what you could do, you would create a Kafka Stream application with a sliding window, and the statistic you get as a Java stream. You get an integer, but the difference is probably it is also relevant to the user. This was your point. So in a Kafka applications, most of the metrics are also relevant, for both, for operations and for users.
Right.
And the MicroProfile metrics, they at the beginning, no one is interested in it. And in one point of time, we actually sometimes expose it to the users. Like a progress bar, what the application is doing. It depends on the application, of course, right?
Yeah.
Back to the memory.
It's all about the use case.
Yeah. Back to the memory consumption. I played with Quarkus, and what's really stunning is, so a Quarkus application with entire MicroProfile is smaller than empty Tomcat or Jetty. This is crazy. So this is.
Well, are you talking about the Quarkus running on a regular JVM or
regular
Quarkus
JVM
running as a native
on Zulu, OpenJDK, or whatever? And that is interesting. So if you're really concerned about memory, and if you compare Quarkus to any other runtime, whether it's Whitefly or Payara or whatever, or Tomcat, it is usually a half. So you can save a half of RAM just running on JVM. So this was this is interesting. And if you run it on Graal, then it's crazy. So if you translate to Graal, there's no more Java, but it is like you will need 10 megs. So for Hello World servers with all microservices. I mean, with Matrix included, Open API and everything there, right? And on JVM, from outside, 80 megs. Everything.
Okay. But is it 80 megs? Is it 80 megs just like up and running at the beginning, or after processing hundreds, thousands, millions of requests?
Yeah, after processing thousands, millions, or billions of requests. I mean, it really depends whether you are caching or not, right? So just processing, no problem. So. And why that? Because there is no reflection, no dynamic behavior at the beginning. That's the interesting point. So they optimize everything at build time, and when you are starting, you have one flat class loader with everything hardwired, and this is crazy fast. So if you are concerned about memory and your clients, Quarkus is probably the solution. So then we can emit a lot of metrics, with MicroProfile. And
the
you are
metrics,
happy.
The more metrics, the better, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Then, you are happy.
Again.
You are happy. Microsoft, revenue will go down. Your clients are happier, and I can have my metrics, and don't have to fiddle with your databases.
So memory is just one aspect. Just to be clear, memory is just one aspect. So one of the problems that sometimes happen with exaggerated monitoring is garbage collection, right?
Yeah.
When you have an agent monitoring your JVM, that agent is processing things, is creating objects, and you're putting things on memory, and so on and so forth. So the more allocation of objects that happen, the more the garbage collection has to clean up later.
Yeah.
And the garbage collector doesn't distinct the objects that are for monitoring and the objects that are for user business processing.
Yeah.
So when a garbage collector has to pause the JVM to clean up that mess, both monitoring and user business code will get impacted, and it will be paused for a few milliseconds. So the more GC pause that happens, and the longer the GC pause happens, the worse it is for throughput and latency of your micro.
Yeah, but you are talking about
people have to be cautious about how much.
Yeah, but you are talking about almost profiling or tracing, very low level profiling, and my metric stuff is more like, just having a view counters. I don't think they have seriously any impact.
Oh, yeah.
On garbage collection. It's like,
when you put it that way,
Yeah.
When you put it that way, yes, it's simple. It's just a counter. It's just a little business metric, and or of course. But what I'm saying is, I'm just trying to raise awareness that people should be conscious of how much metrics and what kind of metrics they are putting into their code.
Yeah, and they should, of course, configure the application with YAML.
Absolutely, the more YAML, the better.
The better,
because because the more YAML you put into your application, the longer it takes to be deployed.
Yeah, and you have time.
Every time you deploy,
yeah,
you forgot something.
Yeah, and if it takes longer, then you have time to think about metrics and monitoring and memory consumption.
Exactly. You have to slow things down. Don't go to production too fast.
Yeah.
Use YAML.
This is cool. This is a perfect, this is the closing words from Chief Java Champions and Principal Product Manager for Java at Microsoft.
I mean, we are in pandemic times. Everything has been slowed down, so we have time to write YAML and we have time to fix actual code. That's good. Good for everybody.
Cool. But now your title right now, it is comparable to at Sun Times. Who would be the person at Sun with Principal Product Manager for Java? This is actually really...
I don't know. I mean, principal product manager is it's a very common title. We have thousands of people with that title at Microsoft. It's not a big thing. No.
I thought it was something like a singleton. There's only one
principal
product manager, and there's Bruno Borges.
No.
And he loves YAML.
That I do. We have other great people at Microsoft. So to be clear, Microsoft is probably the company with the highest number of Java champions fully employed. Microsoft has today something like 11 or 12 Java champions working here.
Cool.
And we have distinguished engineers. Wait
a second. Just because Oracle cannot employ any Java champions, right? Because the Oracle employees cannot be Java.
Well, yeah.
You see.
Hey, I was at Oracle before, so.
But you were not Java champion then, right?
I was not because I was Oracle employee.
You see.
Yeah. Anyways, so we do have lots of Java champions. We have a few employees. We have a few folks working at Microsoft that Java developers might recall. Do you remember the Django 4 book?
Yeah.
Design patterns.
Yeah.
You know Eric Gama, right?
Yeah.
Eric Gama works at Microsoft.
And there was a guy who actually quit Sun and joined Microsoft very early, but he is still active in JVM, and he was on all the JVM Summit. A really nice guy. He's also on Microsoft for ages. So it was before the whole Asia movement. So I have to think, and he's still active in JVM. I think he works on C# or whatever, and still works on. There are lots of people at Microsoft. So and I use Visual Studio Code all the time, actually. And I send you a link to a screencast, my screencast with Quarkus comparing the memory consumption to Tomcat. So I did it because I get lots of requests for memory. Everyone asked me about memory.
Did you know that you could run your webcast using a live share session that people can go into the browser and log into your VS Code session and see you coding? Not through video, but the IDE in the browser. You could do that.
Live sharing. This is the live sharing feature, or is it a service from Asia?
Live share.
Live share.
No. You don't have to have a Microsoft account or Azure account. Nothing. Just install the extension. I'll send you the link later, but it's live share, visual live share, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start a session. You go to the extension in VS Code. You start a session, and you got a URL. Mm-hmm. And you send to people that you want to, let's say, pair program.
Okay.
And the other doesn't have installed. They just go to the browser, and Visual Studio Code will load inside the browser. And you can also have a read-only live share session that people will see you coding. They won't be able to touch they will just see.
I only know the live
So
share that you have pair programming between Visual Studio Code. The thing with the browser is nice.
Yeah. The thing with the browser is very nice. So
where people can find you?
Where people can find me? Well, on Twitter for sure. It's at Bruno Borges. I'm also on Reddit. I post some comments on Reddit from time to time, and usually on the Java subreddit. My username is Bruno C. Borges. There's just a C in the middle. And on LinkedIn, just search for Bruno Borges, Java, Microsoft. You're going to find me as well. We're happy to take messages and comments and whatnot. I don't blog much, but when I do, I usually publish to Medium. So it's medium.com/@Bruno Borges. And there's a recent article that I posted about managing multiple JDKs that got some quite attention from Java developers, because these days developers have to have at least 2 JDKs installed. One Java 8, one Java 11, and it's becoming a mess to manage all these JDKs. So that article has some nice tips and tricks and tools.
Send me the link. I will publish on the show notes. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll send you over.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are deploying Java on Azure or using Java with Visual Studio Code and they have feedback, I'm happy to take that on my email. It's bruno.borges@microsoft.com. Just send me whatever people are feeling like, it can be just a thanks. Hey, this works great, thanks. Okay. Or, hey, this is crap, doesn't work, and tell me why, and then we'll see how we can fix it.
And is there any way for developers, to start easy on Azure? So, they just
Azure.com. Yeah, go to azure.com/free, get a free account, and start playing with Java on Azure App Service. Okay. There's a free tier, and you can deploy, I think, up to 10 applications for free for an entire year. Okay. So it's quite nice.
Cool. Then thank you and see you next time.
See you. Thank you, Adam. Have a great day, man. Cheers.